Hi there, everyone. This is Nexus of Thought, Gavin here, and today I'm going to be dealing with the question, why is physics so difficult? Now, I think this actually comes down to is the fact that it isn't so much that physics is difficult. Yes, it is a challenging subject, but I think a lot of it has to do with poor pedagogy. And I've outlined about seven facets or seven ideas which I think contribute to this poor pedagogy. The first one is that I don't believe that there's enough time is spent on making sure that the students understand the big ideas, the big concepts before moving on to the problem solving. So a lot of students develop misconceptions about how things work, and then they carry them on into the problem solving. And then this, of course, compounds themselves. So I think what teachers need to do here is, and this is something I consciously remind myself to do, is to make sure that the concepts are solidified, that they're grounded, before the students can actually move on to the next area of problem solving. Secondly, it's the overuse of poor analogies in explaining concepts. Sometimes the analogies work and they're simple, and the teacher can lull themselves into a way of thinking that perhaps they've contributed to the student's understanding, but then they found out later that the analogy actually breaks down and that it's not actually a good analogy for describing the particular physics concepts. I found this, for example, with water and resistance to flow. It makes sense when you're talking about electric current and on a more simple level. But when you get into more complicated problems, it becomes a bit more challenging and can actually lead to further misunderstandings. The third issue is that many physics teachers aren't actually physics teachers, but are rather transplanted math teachers. And so what they do is they teach the subject as though it is a type of applied math, when physics is actually much more than that. After all, it is the queen of the sciences, as I like to remind my students. I've been teaching physics now for about 20 years, and I often try and clear this up, because a lot of students think that if they can just come along and they can just plug numbers into formula, everything should be well. And very often it turns out not to be. I'm going to come back to that point for number 7. That'll be point number 7, actually. Then there's the lack of laboratory work and demonstrations. This hands-on idea of getting the students to actually visualize and see things for themselves is key to understanding physics, because many of the concepts that are involved in physics are not counterintuitive. So getting students to work on labs, design their own labs, and then see for themselves how something works, I think is vital. That's why I do a lot of labs, pulley labs and circuit labs, and fluid dynamics labs, where the students can actually get to touch and feel and play with the equipment and see how the physics is involved. North American courses, this would be point number 5, are often also too focused on breadth and not enough on depth. And so what actually happens is this is particularly true in the AP physics course. The students cover a lot of material, tremendous amount of material in the AP course, and but they never really cover a lot of it in depth, so they're kind of skimming it over. And so the teacher kind of ticks off all the boxes and says, yeah, I taught the students circular motion, I taught them rotation and various other aspects, but they never really sink into the more detailed type of questions where the students can really see and challenge themselves, whether they actually understand the material. And that's because of the fact that there's just not enough time. Many North American courses, for example, are semester-based, and so they sacrifice depth in place of breadth. Number 6 is instructional methodology often lacks diversity. So I've always believed that teachers should try and mix everything up. In other words, you should have a lecture one day, you should have a lab, you should have a hands-on group work, an investigation, and try different methods, so that the teaching of the course does not become dull, does not become staid, and that the students are focused on actually understanding it and can see it from a variety of different perspectives. This is very important when looking at students with their different learning styles, and to consolidate it, I think it plays a vital role. Number seven, as I said, there's too much focus on formula memorization. This goes back to the applied mathematics idea of physics. Formula are important, but students need to know where they come from and what are the assumptions behind their usage and what are their limitations. And too often uh, they don't get this because very often, again, there's not enough time. And so they get kind of the instant feeder approach to physics without actually looking at how does this formula actually apply and what are its scope that it can actually be used for. Now, physics is an incredible subject. I've been teaching it, as mentioned before, and I really, really enjoy it. And I think a lot can be learned from this. I'm always trying as a teacher to reflect back on what I'm learning and try and come up with ways in which I can actually improve my method of pedagogy. But all too often, teachers fall into a rut, and it's happened to me as well, where they'll end up teaching the same material over and over again the same way because it becomes easier. And so it's necessary, like all other areas of teaching, to put yourself in a position where you are uncomfortable, but you'll benefit from that. And by being uncomfortable is actually trying new methods and methodologies that will help you with your teaching of the students, for the students. And I think from that, your students will actually benefit. So this is my ideas on why and how I think physics pedagogy can be improved. I'll be talking a bit more about this issue because it's something that's very, very dear to my heart. Thank you very much.